Hello again, everybody.
Oh, hello.
We are going to be doing a different deck profile right now. We are going to be doing Galarian Darmanitan VMax. Kind of a mouthful. But yeah, Galarian Darmanitan VMax. It is a beefy-ish Pokemon, beefy VMAX. It's kind of normal for VMAX, but it has some amazing damage spread potential, and that's really what we're going to be focusing on with this, with some fun extra attackers. Some new tricks up its sleeve. I think this is a really powerful deck potentially if you can build it to be fast enough. And once you start spreading that damage, boy howdy, your opponent is going to be up against the ropes for sure. So excited to look into this deck profile with y'all today. But before we do, I just want to give a shout out to Channel Fireball, Channel Pokemon. If you want to check out my budget deck videos I do for them, you can check out their YouTube channel. I'll put a link to that in the description. Go support the channel, go support me, and you can support me also by using code GyroSean on Channel Fireball. If you do decide to buy anything from them or sign up for a pro membership, you'll have access to tons of content from a lot of really amazing content creators, which is going to be maybe helpful with this new set and all these new things that are going to be going on. So yeah, thank you so much for supporting the channel by using that code, and we'll jump into the deck profile proper now. All right, had to record this a day later, so my outfit's a little different. Anyways, let's get into the deck profile. We have 3 of the Galarian Darmanitan Vs. Now, I'll tell you what this one does in case you ever need to use its attacks. We have the first attack for a water and colorless, 50 damage. You flip a coin. If heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is paralyzed. That could see some value, I think. The second attack, though, 2 water and a colorless, 190, and you do 30 damage to yourself. Nah, I don't know about this. Now, one thing to note about Galarian Darmanitan V and VMAX is the weakness. You are weak to metal. Big sad, huge sad, especially with all of the meta support that's been coming out with, I mean, you have Zacian, you have ADP, you have Luke Metal, you also have Rusted Sword that was just announced, you also have Aegislash. It's very unfair, and this card can't really take advantage of the weakness guard energy because the VMAX, which I will show you now, does not have any colorless in the attack cost. This is Galarian Darmanitan VMAX. We're playing 3 of these as well. So we're playing a 3/3 line of these. And yeah, what it does, it only has 1 attack, but the attack is very good. For 4 water, which is pretty hefty, you do 200 damage, and you spread 30 damage to all of your opponent's benched V or GX Pokemon, right? So this is pretty crazy, especially against a bunch of decks that have a lot of Vs and GXs. That 30 damage adds up, and there is a tool card that lets you do 30 more damage for each one of those. So you're actually doing 60 damage spread. We'll get to the tool card in a bit, but that is really what this is about. Hitting 200, spreading a bunch of damage, setting up a bunch of prizes within just a couple of turns. So in that respect, that's, I think, why this deck has a lot of potential. The weakness is going to be the main thing that holds this deck back, probably for the entirety of its existence. My guess is that this will rotate at the same time Zacian rotates because it came out in the same year. So that is going to be the main thing that holds this card back until something is printed that will take away weakness or something that isn't an energy you need to attach manually. But 3/3 line of Galarian Darmanitan VMAX. And then we need to power this up. It needs 4 energy, which is quite a lot for a water Pokemon. So we're going to be running 3 Snoms, but only 2 Frostmoths. We really just want to find Snom as early as we can on turn 1. Frostmoth, though, Ice Dance lets you accelerate energy from your hand, as many as you want, to your benched water Pokemon. So benched water is the only thing to keep in mind there. The hefty retreat cost on that Galarian Darmanitan VMAX. We also have a 1/1 line of Alolan Sandshrew and the Alolan Sandslash GX. Now, the ability and the first attack are not really what this is for, although they're fine, they're nice. But Spiky Storm GX is really what we're all about here. And Spiky Storm GX reads, this attack does 100 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon that has any damage counters on it. So you're doing 100 damage, and with the telescopic sight, you're doing 30 more for the benched ones. So you're actually doing 130 damage to the bench. So if you do 60 with this and 130 with that, that knocks out Crobats, Dedenes, etc. you can take a ton of prizes this way. And if you hit something for 200 there and then it goes to the bench, you hit it for 130 here, that's 330. It basically knocks out most VMAXs. So Alolan Sandslash GX, I could even see going to a 2-2 line of this in the deck. It's just that good. So we have a 1-1 line for now. And then I have 2 Dedennes. I opted for 2 Dedennes over Dedenne Crobat split because you don't mind discarding things because of a new supporter that we're also getting. So discard is not the worst thing in the world, and this gives you more draw throughout the game rather than more draw on one turn. So I prefer Dedennes here. We have 2 of those. And then our last Pokemon is we have 1 Fion, just to put something on the bench that maybe we have a bunch of damage on and, get a bunch more damage on something else. I think Fion is good in any sort of spread deck in general that needs things to go to the bench. I think Fion is always good in that respect. So those are all of the Pokemon. Like I said, you could probably find different lines, maybe a couple different Pokemon even. I think if you were looking at this deck and you were to say, okay, well, what does this deck not do well against? And it would probably be anything that has a walling effect. This does not have any answers for that as of yet. But Keldeo exists. So we have 4 Professor's Research for our supporter lineup to start. And then we have 3 Marnies. So a pretty standard draw supporter route there. Decent amount of draw, some hand disruption, etc. This is where we get into some of the new cards. We have 2 of the Nessas. Now, Nessa, you put 4 energy, but you could put up to 4 in any combination of water Pokemon or energy cards or energy from your discard into your hand. That is why I think it's okay to discard a bunch, because it makes this more live. And only having 2 Frostmoth is fine if it gets knocked out, so long as you have another Snom. And you might have seen that in the video that came out yesterday. I was fine letting the Frostmoth and the active get knocked out, not waste an air balloon, and say, okay, well, I can just go grab it with the energy that I need and evolve the other Snom I have and then attach the air balloon. So it can allow for some interesting strategies. So we have 2 Nessa, then we've got 2 Boss's Order, just to maybe more directly grab whatever you want on the bench instead of having to Fion and hope your opponent doesn't know what's going on. Now, in terms of the stadium, we have 2 of the training courts. This seems to be a stadium of choice for a lot of these water decks. Inteleon is another example. So I have 2 of those in here. Chaotic Swell is super annoying. If you saw the video, nothing you can do about that. We don't have the Marshadow in here, but 2 training courts. Now, in terms of Pokemon search, because we have a variety of different Pokemon we need to get out, we obviously are going to be playing 4 Quick Balls in here. So 4 Quick Balls, pretty good. And then in terms of the other search, we only have 2 Pokemon Communication, and I opted for 2 Evolution Incense. Now, I've opted for this split largely because it's not a ton of Pokemon in the deck, and you have so many Stage 1s. You have 1, 2, 3 different Stage 1 Pokemon that I felt like some Evolution Incense would get a lot of value out of that in this deck. So we have a 2-2 split. Play around with it, see what you feel, maybe even add more if you find that this deck is not finding you the Pokemon you need when you need it. Outside of that, we have a couple Capacious Buckets in here. I would love to find space for 3, even 4 potentially, so something to play around with. But between Nessa and Bucket and Training Court, there's a decent amount of energy search from the discard and the deck, so it felt all right. And then again, we have to only accelerate to the bench with Frostmoth, so we have 4 switches, just sort of the full count there, as well as 2 air balloons, which you would put on the Frostmoth for the most part. That's really what you want to put those air balloons on. Outside of that, the only other item card we have 3 of the new telescopic sights. Now, I mentioned this earlier, but the attacks of this Pokemon, the card is attached to 30 more damage to your opponent's benched V or GX. So I'm actually not sure. I think maybe the Galarian Darmanitan VMax is 30 to the bench. Doesn't matter if they're V or GX. But telescopic sight only adds damage for V and GXs. Something to note. If you're practicing or playing this deck, this would not impact Jirachis or anything. But still a very good card. We have 3 of them in here because this is just, I think, so important to get onto multiple VMAXs and onto the Alolan Sandslash. So I have a very heavy count there of telescopic sight. And now we can just sort of get into the energy. We have 4, 8, and 12. We have 12 water energy total. This again, play around with this. I like this count for now. It's fine. I never had too much of an issue finding enough water, but I did add a second Dene in so I could have more draw, so that if I wanted, I could Nessa and Dene in the same turn. That is the main problem with Nessa, is it's your supporter for turn, so you don't have any draw that turn. So you may have turns where like I need a couple things and getting only 1 or 2 water with the Nessa is not enough. I need 3 or 4 maybe even. So I added in the second Dene to get you the draw. 12 energy though feels about right. It's 4 energy for VMax. 2 VMaxes is 8. A Lone Sanchez requires 3. That's 11. It feels fine. It feels fine. So that is the deck. Hopefully you'll like it. Hopefully it makes sense. I would definitely say this is a deck that you should definitely give a try, give it a look. The metal weakness is something that, what are you going to do? I mean, it is what it is, and it sucks. But other than that, this is really good. And I think we're all just sort of waiting for that Blastoise VMAX to come out next year. But until then, probably one of the better water decks. Now, the one thing I will say, you might even consider an Inteleon VMAX line in here somewhere, a 1-1 or maybe even a split 2-2-2-2, just to cover that weakness. Just one little note there I forgot to mention early on. So, but hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, subscribe, all that good jazz, and I will catch y'all in a future video. Carpe awesome.